Going to talk today not about any particular disorder, but why one would want to work with kids and some of the challenges that are faced in terms of doing so. So let's start by thinking about the fun parts of working with kids and teenagers. And I think that there are a number of things. I enjoy their energy. You can often be very playful when you're working with kids. Sometimes I feel like I have a magic wand when I'm working with kids. So, for example, I was working with a child who had been pretty seriously burned, and we worked a fair amount on fears of hot things. And once we met that goal, she then wanted to work on some body image things. And I looked at her and I said, I think that you're beautiful just as you are. And she came in the next week and I said, okay, let's talk about body image stuff. She said, not a problem. I'm like, okay, how come? And she said, well, you told me that I'm beautiful as I am. And that's one of the lovely things about working with kids, that we have a magic wand and kids are willing to accept the things that an adult who they trust and respect says to them. And so all the work that we had done before really helped her make some of these changes at this point. I'd love to say that working with kids all the time is fun, but not so much. And they're difficult for a number of different reasons. They are not good self-reporters. It becomes difficult to know what is normal and what isn't. Is it normal for a 10-month-old to cry and cry and cry when, mom and dad leave her alone, at a babysitter's? And I think the answer is yes. And in fact, it's not just yes, but this is healthy, because what it means is that this child knows that mom and dad are important in his or her life and knows who they are and sees them leaving and goes, I don't want you to go. Now, when a 4-year-old cries and cries and cries when mom and dad leave, that's a different issue. And so what is normal and what isn't? Is it a problem if a 5-year-old has difficulty sitting through a dinner at a restaurant? Well, in part it depends on what kind of restaurant. If it's McDonald's and we're talking 10 minutes, maybe that's a problem. If we're talking a fancy restaurant and it's an hour, then sure. Okay, so what is normal? And so part of what I would encourage you to do is take developmental psychology, work with kids, both normal kids and kids not having problems. Become a Girl Scout leader. Become a teacher at your, in the religious education program at your church. Volunteer to read at your child's school. Learn what is normal, what is typical for the age. Another part is that one of the things that is typical for many kids as they're trying to get a feeling for who they are is that they may become fairly oppositional. That they are defining themselves not in terms of what they necessarily want, but in terms of being different from other people. So suddenly having this urge to juggle machetes when told not to. And I suspect that a number of us are also in that place. Working with kids and teens is challenging because they're often poor observers. They have a difficult time, describing what is happening in a situation and may only describe what happened most recently. They may only be able to identify 2 or 3 emotions. So think about Sesame Street, where they're working on trying to get happy, sad, proud, angry, surprised. As adults, we're able to talk about our interior experience with a little bit more insight and sophistication. And frankly, adults often have problems with these sorts of issues too. Childhood depression may or may not look like adult depression. And so, we think about depression in terms of tearfulness and, crying and withdrawal. And yet many kids may, instead of becoming tearful, depressed, and withdrawing, they may throw things, they may refuse to do their homework, they may become more oppositional, they may engage in somewhat antisocial behaviors, refuse to go to school, experiment with drugs and alcohol. And particularly when there is a change in functioning, we should begin thinking about this as depression, even if they're not describing it in that way. Let me add one more piece, and that is that we should be thinking about what our values are. And that may influence what we see as normal and not. Also, as you're thinking about working with kids, think also about the family. The family is an important part of this child's life. And so you want to be thinking about, how is this family working well? Is it a good match for this particular child? And what can we do to help it become a better match? And so I think that it's probably not good clinical practice not to also work with the parents of a child. And take care.